one where you find that a look at this.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, welcome back. If you are just joining us, you're watching Daybreak on Trust Television. Now let's take a look at some of the stories making headway on our dailies this morning. And we're going to begin with the lead newspaper, the Daily Trust newspaper. And the lead story there states why 104 more ISWAP fighters surrendered. And the riders, terrorists likely behind Okene police station attack. Abductors of Kaduna Catholic priest demand 60 million. And other stories there, right at the top, you'd see electoral bill. I'll advise Buhari against assent if, this is according to Malami. You'd also see other stories. Ganduje leads as APC unveils sharing template for Kanu. Fuel queues linger in Abuja, Lagos as NATO protest diesel price. And on page 39 rather, NFF dumps Pesero, retains Iguavon as interim Super Eagles coach. Reps demand probe of 45 million account not linked to BVN. And on page 5, Hanifa, court orders legal representation for Tanko, others. You'd also see on page 4, the Daily Trust newspaper, 2023. Expect enormous challenges, Sanusi tells presidential aspirants. Nigerian politicians put the cart before the horse. Kari. You'd also see Wike meets Makarfi, rules out zoning in PDP. These are some of the major stories on the Daily Trust newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Blueprint newspaper this morning. The paper leads with the story that says insecurity. And that's the kicker there. It has the other story says Niger imposes curfew on Shiroro, Rafi local government areas. The writer says urges coordinated military action to flush out terrorists. Bafarawa laments Zamfara killings. Gunmen kidnap Kaduna Catholic priest, kill cook as troops rescue 7. Okene area police command attacked 1, killed, scores injured. And then you see also impeachment, Tambwal moves to save Zamfara deputy governor. And then below the big picture there, you see Sterling Bank pledges 1 billion naira to businesses founded by women. Well, you may say an effort to empower more women, isn't it? And that's commendable. NIMC portal breaks down. Banks, telcos, passport issuance suffer. State APC lawmakers across Nigeria back Bello's presidential bid. 16-year-old, 2 others win 12.5 million naira scholarships in InterSwitch Sparks 3.0. You also find Nigeria receives 2 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine. TSA reps begin probe of 1.2 trillion naira unclaimed funds. Fidelity Bank disburses 34 billion naira in credit to boost rice value chain. So these are some of the stories on the front pages of page of Blueprint newspaper.
Okay, let's take a look at some other stories on the Punch newspaper this morning. The lead story, portal breakdown. NIMC telcos meet again. Chinese, Nigerians battle faults. Subscribers remain stranded. And the riders, NIN verification problems affecting other agencies. Downtime enters 7th day. Chinese, Indian manufacturers join Galaxy Backbone in marathon repair sessions. JAMB rules out postponement of 2022 UTME registration deadline amidst hitches. You also find other stories right at the top on page 21. GTCU completes acquisition of funds management pension firms. And on page 10, you see the story about Sanusi denies presidential bid, says Nigeria sinking deeper in 2023. That's quite a scare, isn't it? You find the details of that story on page 10 on the Punch newspaper. Reps probe 45 million accounts without BVN with 1.2 trillion naira deposit. We are set for indefinite strike. Federal government dribbling us, says ASU. You see other stories there. There's a pictorial there that shows Lagos filling stations shut as queues persist in Abuja and other parts of the country. Wike Makarfi state grounds for PDP's victory in 2023. And on pages 4 and 5, widow faces imprisonment for cutting house help's body with razor blade. Ondo keeps children. Presidency. I want to stop Nigeria from disintegration, says Tambuwal. These are some of the lead stories on the Punch this morning.
All right, take a look at the Nation newspaper this morning. It has the lead story. Says petrol panic in Lagos and Abuja. You'd see also NATO threatens strike over cost. No scarcity of product, says NNPC. Well, it appears that this one is artificial scarcity. Someone is trying to force scarcity on Nigerians from what we are seeing. Well, below that, you see the pictorial actually showing you the long queues, across these cities, Lagos and Abuja. I personally experienced one myself. Yesterday. Well, I'm going to tell you the story of my life.
Okay.
How it was for
sad.
me yesterday, just to get feel. And below that, you see our position on Igboho, Kanu, Abakari by Malami. So these are the main stories on the Nation newspaper this morning. Okay, above, at the very top there, not forgetting to mention some of them. IMF calls for fiscal reforms, VAT raise, subsidy cut. And you see also, forget president if there's no unity. Wike wants PDP. NFF appoints Amunike, Eagles chief coach. And you see GTCO acquires investment, one pension manager. So these are the stories on the front page of the Nation today.
On The Guardian this morning, The Guardian is also leading with a story about fuel scarcity, panic buying in Lagos as NATO threatens strike. Artificial scarcity caused by recall of dirty petrol, source claims. NATO to withdraw haulage services over diesel price, operation cost. And you see other stories right at the top. Federal government receives 2 million doses of J&J vaccine from EU as NCDC confirms 36 new infections. And on page 8, IPOB reaffirms April deadline for ban of cow meat in Southeast. So there's not going to be cow meat. You'll find the details of that story on page 8. And Makarfi Wike say Nigeria bleeding from APC misrule. Seek united PDP for rescue. Airlines seek review of 200,000 COVID-19 test protocol per traveler. And you see a pictorial there that shows you the long queues in different parts of the country. I think there's Abuja there and other parts of the country. Federal government will bring Igboho back to Nigeria after prosecution in Benin, says Malami. Nigeria to spend 92% of 2022 revenue on debt servicing, IMF projects. And on page 18, GTCO acquires investment, one fund management pension subsidiaries. These are some of the major stories in The Guardian.
Watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital. Now, talking about fuel subsidy, that's a story that is virtually on all our newspapers this morning. It appears that the queues are back to Lagos and Abuja, and it's been a nightmare for many commuters in the past few days here in this part of the country. Me, for one, I would say, I had a personal experience. So imagine after being on the queue for about an hour, and then it gets to your turn, and the fuel is said to have been finished.
You know, that's what they say. I had similar experience, and they tell you, oh, the field is finished. At some point, if you want to get through the queue, you have to pay extra and give a tip or something.
True.
Before they get you through. And it's quite sad. And they said there is field.
It's
NNPC
sad.
said there is field.
It's sad.
What is the
And now,
problem?
guess what again? Now, after that experience, I now try to move away to another filling station to get fuel. And then, because I desperately needed that fuel, because my car is on red, so I needed it urgently. And so when I get to the next filling station, there was this long queue, very, very long queue, and I just couldn't wait. So I thought, okay, maybe I should just, and there are these boys, you know, around the filling stations selling, you know, what we call the black market. And I thought, well, because I needed it desperately, maybe I should just patronize one of these boys. And then I did that, and then before I know what's happening, the next minute, by the time I drive past these boys, just right ahead of me, there was a filling station and there was no queue. And guess what? This is where these boys go buy the fuel in jerry cans and come back on the road and they sell them. So and I was like, so what did I just do? You know, it was annoying. It was a wrong calculation. I didn't really see that, you know, coming, but that happened. And, you know, goes to say, first of all, these boys selling, how do they get it? They get it very easily and faster.
Yes. And they give a tip. That's how they get it.
You know, so, and then they come, they sell to people and all that. I think we've gone past that, and we shouldn't, you know, try to come back to that era. Because as far as fuel subsidy is concerned, a lot of things have been done. I think that for the past few years, if you've noticed, there haven't been queues during festive periods, for instance. If you notice, queues during festive period has been a tradition. Usually, once it's Christmas time or New Year, you usually, you know, see long queues in filling stations. But that didn't happen for a couple of years, and I feel like, okay, we've gone past, you know, those days where you have all of these long queues.
And now we're back.
And NNPC will say there's fuel in supply, and so I wonder what's going on. It appears that there is some kind of hoarding.
I think there should be some form of monitoring, you know, to monitor these filling stations and how they operate. It's not just to say, okay, there's fuel, go get fuel. When people are still struggling to have access to this fuel, I think there should be more monitoring, you know, to actually sanction these filling stations. A
couple of times I've been to filling stations, I've seen officials from the DPR try to, you know, make sure that there's no hoarding, you know, going on in some of these filling stations. But again, we always, you know, ask that they do better, they do more. Sometimes they are overstretched, you know, and all that. But yeah, they can do more, they can do better as far as that is concerned. Also, on the front pages of our papers today, we are saying that more Boko Haram fighters are surrendering, and that's a good one, is a good signal.
But for me, the question is, why now? You know.
Well, why now? Because superior firepower by our armed forces, our military, are dealing, you know, with this terrorists in the bushes from their hideouts. In fact, they go to them to the enclaves, from what we have gathered, and apparently, the fire is much, you know, on them, and so the last resort is to just, you know, come out and surrender. You
know, I'm really scared, you know, because it's ISWAP, because these people are very, very smart and they're very cunning. Some would say this is another tactics, another strategy, but I really hope that that's not the case eventually.
Yeah, we hope so. We hope that before they are reintegrated back into the society, they will go through the process, you know, of de-radicalization and all the other things that need to be done to make sure that they are safe. I mean, they go back to communities safe. And, you know, one thing that I keep pondering about and keep wondering about on how to deal with this is, you know, how will they relate with the communities that they once, you know, attack, they once maim, you know, and the people that were victims of their attacks, how will they face them? You know, because in some cases, they actually know each other. In some cases, they belong to the same communities. You know, in fact, some are even related. You know, so you kind of, you know, think about this. How will they face each other when they go back? It's a big question that I think that it will take time, you know, to get answers, because that healing is not going to come easily. It's going to take a long time, and
it's
I
ice
hope,
swap.
yes,
I'm really scared of that.
I hope that the what do you call now? I hope that de-radicalization will be effective, and I hope that the victims, you know, of these attacks will find a place in their heart really to forgive.
Yeah,
know,
to forgive
these
they'll
perpetrators of
never
this
forget,
crimes,
I guess.
because it's, I don't know, if it was me, I don't know if I will be able to forgive, but again, that's the only way we get to heal.
Humans, right?
You know, and move. And, you know, again, on the other hand, is the person that did the attack, is the person remorseful? Is the person having a repentant heart indeed? You know, because it's one thing to say, okay, I have surrendered my arms, I have, you know, I'm no more going back, you know, to the fighting and all that. But again, it's another thing to have that, you know, happen right from the heart. So we look forward to seeing how this, you know, panned out and how this is managed. Now, we'll look at more stories on the front pages of our papers, but that will be shortly after this breather. Our newspaper.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television. And right here in the studio, we have our guest with us, Sunday Michael. He's the Deputy Business Editor, Daily Trust. And he had some little, you know, challenges coming down here to the studio this morning.
Sure.
Well, welcome to Daybreak. I mean, I was just sharing my own personal experience with the whole fuel subsidy thing. It's all over the place on our papers today. It appears that the queues are back now and everyone is now affected.
Yeah, back from the sudden. We didn't see it coming. There were no prior warnings. We were not sure what was happening. We just woke up and the entire filling station stopped selling. You know, so if you hadn't fuel in your tank the night before and you were hoping that by morning you were going to fill up and continue to pursue whatever activities you have, that was no longer possible. So people have been cutting. Even the black market guys were taken by surprise because they are also not there, you know, as rampant as we used to have those days when there are prior warnings about the likely scarcity and all of that. So it's...
Well, this looks strange, actually, because in the past few years, we haven't experienced this, especially if you look at the festivities. The festive periods usually is, you know, marked by, you know, long queues in filling stations. That didn't happen in the past few years. And we thought, oh, okay, maybe we've gone past this stage. And what's really going on, you know, all of a sudden? NNPC says there's fuel in supply, so it appears that maybe some hoarding is taking place.
Absolutely. What we are seeing is a failure of supervision. You cannot, in all honesty, say you have supplies and these guys are not selling. It means you have given them products at government-controlled prices and they are hoarding, hoping to make the situations difficult for people to then pay more for this product. Those days, what we used to see monitors from DPR or even the NNPC going out in form of a task force alongside with police officers and the rest of that, especially because they have the records of filling stations that have been given supplies. You go to those exact places and make sure that they are dispensing. If they are not, what they were doing some time ago was to discharge whatever was left in their reserve for free and sanction them, which was a punishment none of them would want to take, because at the end of the day, whatever you wanted to make from selling these things through the black channel would not be as much to, you know, compensate for the punishments that you were going to receive. You know, in addition to sealing your station for a number of days or weeks or even months, as the case may be. But all that has fizzled away right before even the offices of these inspectors. The filling stations right opposite their offices are not selling. And the ones that pretend to be selling, that have over 20 pumps, will just be dispensing with one pump. So you end up spending hours on the queue, precious hours that you would have devoted to pursuing your livelihood. You sit on the queue, and sometimes you get to the pump and they tell you the fuel is finished. You have to go
Just
get
like
a black
yesterday.
market to drive your vehicle out of a filling station and probably. So it's a sad development, honestly.
So what is really the problem? You know, these people that are supposed to be responsible for doing the monitoring are just playing, you know, a dumb face, I would say.
There are layers.
Is there some form of foul play?
There
or
are layers of
something?
monitoring. If the monitors are not going out, they report to some persons. I mean, the minister driving this economy, is it that he has been moving around and he has not asked questions about why filling stations are not dispensing? That's your primary portfolio. Like, if you are a boss over a ministry that does something that is supposed to be visible, you should evaluate your efficiency by the availability of those products or not. If, for instance, I'm a Minister of Works, I know I have approved money for some roads to be constructed, and I've been driving past that road for several years and nothing is happening, and I know that I've dispensed of money, I should be asking questions. So what is the Minister of Petroleum doing? And there are two Ministers of Petroleum, by the way, the President and Mr. Silva. Both of them use these roads. There is no how you will pretend, whichever way they choose to do it, that you will not have noticed that there are queues building up in the Federal Capital Territory. And it has been there for 3 days in Lagos. So you can imagine the amount of productivity as a country we have lost. We are already struggling to be optimal with poor power supply, with inefficient movement, and then now people cannot even get to their places of work. It's appalling.
Now, could the threats for a possible strike action by NATO be responsible for this? I mean, is there any element of maybe?
Well, there's a part to it, but the NATO complaints are also likely about rising prices of diesel. Quietly, because diesel is deregulated, the prices have been shooting up astronomically lately. Sold for about 380. They are even complaining that it may hit 420 by the end of the month. That is huge for businesses who rely on diesels to run complexes, to keep businesses alive and all of that. But because that sector is fully deregulated, people bring in at whatever cost and sell at all. Nobody really is paying attention to that sector. So they are also complaining. But remember that they are petroleum tanker driver owners, and what they do or do not do have a way of impacting on the supply chain. You know, if they choose not to move this petrol, then it would have an effect. It will block the areas of excess from the areas of scarcity. So, yeah, it has its own effect, but theirs have not even come into full effect yet. They are just saying if nothing is done in the days ahead, then we may be forced to rethink our operation. But you cannot explain this sudden scarcity in Lagos and Abuja.
And I'm wondering why just Lagos and Abuja? Why is this not across board? You know,
it's strategic. It also tells you that there is a deliberate attempt by cabals to hold this economy to ransom. If you puncture the Lagos and the Abuja economy, you have practically punctured everywhere. You know, in essence, if Lagos goes to sleep one day, more than 50% of the income you make as a country comes from there. If Lagos goes to sleep, it means things from the ports cannot hit any other part of this country. It means fuel in the farm tanks cannot go out of those places. Goods imported can also not go out. So it's huge. An economy of over 20 million people is not a place where you want to distort supply flow. And the same thing with Abuja. Everything depends on movement. The way the city is structured, we come from everywhere to the city center to work and then return to our various bases. So if anything disrupts that movement pattern, a whole lot is impacted. And you know, that is why you don't want to sit down and watch this particular economy crumble by even an hour.
Okay. Now, we're seeing other stories, like the one on the Daily Trust. 104 more ISWAP fighters surrendered.
You know, I expressed the same concern as you, listening to you, you know,
it's really
complain
scary.
about it because of several reasons. You know, the way it is presented, it makes it look like because these people have surrendered, we have sort of had, you know, it's more like a victory and that we have gone past our worst days. But that is not exactly true. It presents a whole different dilemma that we are not prepared for. You know, at first, at every stage of this war, you know, we have been confronted with things that we have never managed in our entire life. The issues of refugees from war, it's a very complex thing to manage. If you know the issue of the East Africa, all the people that were dislodged from all that crisis from Central Africa and the rest of them, The places where they settled had become a town of its own. It's like an urban slum. 10, 20, 30, 40 years after, they are not able to reintegrate into their original societies. They are neither integrated into the places they moved on to. So the places where they settled as a makeshift camp has become a slum unto itself. And the world is completely lost of ideas on what to do with those kind of people. It is that kind of internal crisis that is brewing. First of all, the heads of these families have caused so much mayhem. You know, they've brought people to untold hardship by killing their breadwinners and destroying their livelihood. So you don't expect reintegrations to be easy. Like, I cannot have the knowledge that you were responsible for my father's death, and then you come out from the bush and say you have repented, and I will take a room in my father's house and hand to you.
It is even more complicated when you look at the closing of the camps. You know, in Maiduguri, for instance, the IDP camps are being shut down by the state government. So at the same time, you're having these people who are also surrendering. So everyone is likely to go back to the community. So how are they going to face each other?
In this guy's case, it's difficult for me to even describe them as an IDP, internally displaced persons. Were they displaced, or they chose their board and came out for strategic reasons to say we have handed over? That is not to get me wrong. It's not like handing over is not a victory in itself, but it plays up a brand new kind of problem of reintegration and problem of managing. I mean, we know the stories of the IDP camps. There were people who were forced out of their homes, who had livelihoods. They were farmers, they were doing all kinds of things, forced out of their home by circumstances that were beyond their control. Some of them would not wish to, I mean, if you visit the ID camp for one day, if you have any feelings left in you, you may not be able to eat for 2 days. The kind of things that go on there. Teen girls, 14, 15, 16, 17, go through sexual intercourse every day at the IDP camp for just a 250 naira loaf of bread. Go and see there. Every girl you see around that age, 7 out of 10 of them are pregnant.
My goodness.
You don't want to talk about the quality of food. We know about reports that expose beans weevils or rice that were seized by custom that we were told were not good for human consumption being dumped at the IDP camps. So it's a less than humane, less than dignified condition of living. Even the guys there, if they had options, would not want to be there. Now, if the government could not take care of people who were victims of circumstances, let know these ones. These ones have carried arms before. They've lived within the precincts of killings and wars and all that. And we live in a country where trauma management is such a big problem.
Big problem.
So how do you think they will manage these ones? Are we not going to make them worse people? When they come in, do you think these people have the tenacity to endure what the IDPs endured
and we are not
without going back?
And we're not talking about 200 or 300
You know,
or
I mean, they are in
500.
thousands.
You know.
We are not prepared for them. Nowhere in our budget do we have anything to take care of these people from the point of view of de-radicalization to reorientation to trauma. Some of those kids that were born into those conditions did not negotiate those circumstances. They grew up seeing people killed and maimed in the environment where they live, and they've come to accept it like a normal way of life. You need to do a whole lot to move these people from that kind of mindset to one that allows them truly develop as normal human beings and as children, you know, into adulthood. Do we have that mechanism in place?
Maybe, should we think of maybe some kind of colony for them, you know, and then they should maybe start life, you know, their own way and, you know, do business with themselves.
When you say colony, it's just semantics really, because all we are talking about is some kind of arrangements that move them from where they are to something sane. We don't have that for normal citizens. I was in Bauchi for the better part of when that place was challenged by Boko Haram. At one of those points, I went to now the teaching hospital in Bauchi, where bombs and gunshots had wounded people. They brought them in there. I was supposed to be there for a routine medical checkup when the incidents happened. And they dumped people on the emergency ground, some with parts of their body bleeping from gunshots and the rest of that. Some of them soldiers, weeping from sheer pain. What I'm trying to compare is if people whom we are supposed to pay the utmost attention to, cannot even get medical. I wonder what we
will
will do with
to
this set. We are just not prepared for the circumstances we have. We are not asking for help. That is the painful part of it. We don't have the capacity to manage this problem. In fairness, a whole lot has to be done. Now we are asking all the NGOs to root out of the place. We are supposed to provide help because somehow we have also failed to properly scrutinize these people and identify people who are there genuinely to provide support rather than make money out of that circumstances. So it's a big mess. It's not something the Borno State government alone can handle. They don't have the capacity to do that. It is also not something, in my honest opinion, as a person, that I think the Nigerian government alone can have. It's about time that we seek all the kind of help and advice that we can get as far as this special crisis is concerned.
I mean, also, we must not also forget to talk about, finding justice for those who were arrested, who didn't surrender. They were arrested, and we have quite a number of them, So
whether you were arrested or you surrendered, there is something called retribution. Justice is key. You cannot ask for peace without justice. What becomes the fate of the person who didn't ask to be displaced, who didn't ask for his farmland and his houses to be burned? Women who have become, and children who have become orphaned by the actions of these people. What exactly is justice? What can we do to heal? How do we go on this journey? Is it by designing programs where these people come face to face and offer some kind of apology? What would they do to communicate to us in all sincerity that they have moved away from that past? And how can we get these other people who have been victims to then say, these people seem to be getting the pets of the state after causing us so much, or so it does appear like the only way you get attention of the state is to actually carry arms against the state. So this our gentle state of do not retaliate, does not really pay us. Maybe we should shift into that level so that they can then begin to pay proper attention to how do we arrest that kind of circumstances? How do we make those child that have become orphaned feel that this country is truly sorry for not being able to protect them, and so they will guarantee them the best of education and life as a way of compensating for what their parents would have done were they to be alive. So it's a complete package. It's not just about saying we have built 1 or 2 rooms in one desert somewhere that has been deserted for 3 years. You can now go back so that we can show the world that we have moved on and the security is better. No, it's beyond that.
But there has to be a way around this, isn't
Absolutely.
it? In conclusion, what do we need to do as a country to handle this, to manage this? In what ways do we need to increase capacity or some sort?
First of all, it starts from rehabilitating people who have been impacted. People have given up on this country. And the first major crisis you have as a country is people who don't believe in the cause. They are like dead weights. No matter how you want to move, they are not moving. Now, rehabilitating them would mean not just building houses, but entrenching them with new skills. They also need trauma counseling. They need to heal. We have not given them that space. You know what people have done? They've shifted their problem to one part of their head and locked it up. And every time there is a major impact on their life, it opens up that canker, it opens up that wound, and they become the dangerous version of themselves. We need to collectively, whether as private sectors, as government and international community, find a way to get these people to heal and to forgive the prejudices of their past, and then give them skills to become self-determinant. Give education to their children and gradually midwife that process. It's not something you just go and do, dump and go away. Midwife a process that will allow them transform from what used to be the previous life to something that now gives hope over a 5, 10, 15, 20 years period. The way we do development planning for the country, we have to transition these people into normalcy. It is in doing that whatever you do to this repentance would really not mean anything, because you then begin to show the repentant guys that if you are truly willing and sincere about repentance, your life can be transformed as these other people. And I don't understand the repentant program that doesn't even give us a template about how they operated in the bush. We are not seeing harm. We are not seeing how they have survived with those. Did you see these children? I mean, can you even open your door in the city center overnight and not be beaten up by mosquitoes? We are seeing people who sort of look fresh, who look like there is a different thing happening there with them. So there is a lot of debriefing that needs to happen.
Worried about.
That needs to be asked. So it leaves all of us perplexed, but I hope somehow around the dialogue between the federal government, the international community, the United Nations, and even the state, not just Borno State, the entire state of the Northeast, if not the entire Northwest, to begin to discuss the strategy, because if they overrun Borno in terms of capacity to manage the crisis, these guys will spill into other places and they will become even bigger problem for those surrounding states.
All right, well, thank you so much. We have to end this now because of time. We appreciate your coming to join us on Daybreak.
My pleasure, and my apologies again for coming.
All right, well, we'll be speaking with Sunday Michael, Deputy Business Editor, Daily Trust newspaper. And now we'll be taking a short breather. When we come back, we'll take a look at other discussions on the...
Where you find that they look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
Because I have said that